Imagine sitting in class, half asleep, counting the minutes until the bell rings. When the loudspeaker crackles to life and a voice says, "This is not a drill." Lockdown now. The lights flicker. The hallway goes silent. You hear footsteps, a door slamming, maybe even a scream. In that moment, your classroom stops being a place of learning and becomes a cage. Tonight, we'll relive 3 terrifying true school stories that prove some of the scariest moments don't happen in haunted houses. They happen in hallways, classrooms, and locker rooms where we once felt safe. It started like any other dull Tuesday morning, the kind where the fluorescent lights hum too loud and the ticking clock becomes the only sound you really hear. Our regular history teacher was out sick, and a substitute had taken her place. A tall, pale man in his mid-40s with a faded tie and eyes that didn't seem to blink enough. From the moment he walked in, the room felt off. He didn't introduce himself, didn't smile, just wrote the word silence across the board in big, uneven letters and sat at the teacher's desk. His movements were mechanical, deliberate, almost rehearsed. We exchanged nervous glances, the kind you share when something feels wrong but no one wants to say it out loud. At first, we thought he was just strict. But then he started watching us, really watching us. Every time someone coughed, whispered, or even shifted in their chair, his gaze would snap toward them. His eyes had this sharp, glassy focus that made your stomach twist. Halfway through class, the fire alarm went off. Normally, we'd cheer, ready for a few minutes of fresh air. But before anyone could stand, the substitute slammed the door shut. "No one leaves," he said. His voice was calm, but there was a strange excitement behind it, like someone holding back a laugh at the wrong moment. We froze. The hallway outside was chaos, students shouting, alarms blaring, but inside, everything went silent except for his breathing. He started pacing up and down the aisles, mumbling something under his breath. I could only make out fragments. They won't take it again. Not this time. A girl in the front row quietly reached for her phone under the desk. He saw her reflection in the window and moved faster than I thought possible. He snatched the phone from her hand, gripping it so tight his knuckles turned white. "No calls," he hissed. "They'll hear us." That's when the banging started, heavy, rhythmic, coming from the hallway. A man's voice shouted, "Open the door!" The substitute froze. His eyes darted toward the sound, then back to us. "It's too late," he whispered. "Too late." The door burst open moments later. Security rushed in, followed by the principal. The substitute didn't resist. He just stood there, shaking, tears running down his face. One of the officers grabbed his backpack, and inside, they found a large kitchen knife wrapped in a torn map of the school. He wasn't a substitute at all. He was a former teacher who had been fired years earlier for threatening staff after a breakdown. He'd used an old ID badge to get inside. The fire alarm had been pulled by a student in another hall, pure coincidence that saved our lives. The school shut down for the rest of the week. Every hallway, every classroom felt different after that. Colder, emptier. For months, I couldn't sit in that room without glancing at the door every few seconds, half expecting him to return. Even now, when the alarm rings, a small part of me freezes. Not because of the sound, but because I'll always remember the look in his eyes. A mix of regret, anger, and something darker. Something that didn't belong in a classroom at all. It was late October, the kind of night when the fog rolls in thick and heavy, wrapping the town in silence. Our middle school sat on a hill outside of town, surrounded by woods that always looked darker than they should. That night, at exactly 9:13 p.m., the local 911 dispatch center received a call. The line was full of static, but a voice, small, trembling, and young, whispered just one thing: "Help me." The call traced back to Jefferson Middle School, specifically room 108. The problem was, the school had been locked for hours. The janitor had already left, and the phone lines in that wing had been disconnected years ago during renovations. Still, officers were dispatched immediately. When they arrived, the building was completely dark. The main doors were locked, and there were no signs of forced entry. They entered through the back, flashlights cutting through the dust and shadows. The air felt thick, heavy with that strange pressure that comes right before a storm. Down the hall, near the science labs, they found room 108. The door was closed, but a faint light flickered beneath it, like an old bulb struggling to stay alive. One officer pushed the door open. The moment it creaked, the light went out. Inside, everything was covered in plastic sheets. The desks were stacked against the walls. The whiteboard was still marked with faded notes from years ago. And on one of the desks in the far corner, a school phone sat unplugged, its receiver off the hook. They checked for signs of intruders. Nothing. The school's alarm system hadn't been triggered. Still, they sealed off the building and reviewed the security cameras the next morning. The footage from the night of the call showed something that none of them could explain. At exactly 9:13 p.m., the hallway camera outside room 108 flickered. For about 3 seconds, a faint figure appeared near the door. A girl, her head slightly tilted, her face pale and blurred. When the camera stabilized, she was gone. The principal later revealed that room 108 had been closed since 2012 after a tragedy that still haunted the staff. A student named Emily had taken her life there after months of severe bullying. She was only 13. That night, she'd called her mother one last time from that same classroom phone before doing it. After the police investigation, the school decided to seal the room permanently. They moved classes elsewhere, covered the windows, and cut the remaining phone line. But every October, right around Halloween, staff members working late say they still hear it. A faint, rhythmic click, the sound of a phone receiver being lifted, followed by a static whisper that fades into silence. The janitor, who was the first to find her back then, refuses to go near that hallway. He claims that one night, while mopping, he heard the intercom crackle to life, even though it had been turned off. A soft, young voice said, "Can I go home now?" Some say it's just old wiring or interference from the nearby radio tower. But those who've heard the recording of the 911 call, the breath, the fear, in that single word, believe something else entirely. That maybe, somewhere between the past and the present, Emily is still trying to make that one call, the one no one answered in time. It was supposed to be a normal Friday practice, nothing special, just drills, sweat, and jokes before the weekend. The locker room smelled like detergent and old sneakers, the buzz of cheap fluorescent lights bouncing off the metal lockers. I remember laughing with my teammate Carlos when the intercom crackled to life, cutting through the noise. Lockdown. This is not a drill. The laughter stopped instantly. Our coach froze mid-sentence. The air changed. It got heavy, like the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. Coach turned the lights off and whispered for everyone to stay quiet. We could still hear the hum of the air vents and our own breathing. Somewhere down the hall, a locker slammed, then another. We thought maybe someone was playing a prank until we heard the screaming. A teacher's voice, sharp and terrified, echoing from the gym. "Run! He's got something." Coach locked the door and motioned for us to hide in the showers. The tile floor was freezing beneath our bare feet. The sound of heavy footsteps approached, slow, dragging steps, each one louder than the last. Someone tried the locker room door. The handle rattled violently. My heart pounded so hard, I thought whoever was outside could hear it. Then it stopped. Silence. 10 seconds, 20, and then 3 slow knocks. One of the freshmen started to cry, and Coach covered his mouth, whispering, "Don't make a sound." The knocking turned to scratching, metal against metal. Something, or someone, was tracing their fingers along the row of lockers, dragging slowly as if counting them. The sound crawled down the walls and into my bones. Minutes felt like hours. Somewhere above us, a loud crash echoed, then a single gunshot. We flinched, huddling closer. Coach whispered a prayer under his breath. The silence that followed was worse than the noise, thick, suffocating, endless. Finally, the hallway filled with voices, police shouting commands, the clatter of boots. The door burst open, and the flood of light was blinding. They told us to stay put. When they let us out, the gym looked like a war zone. Benches overturned, a window shattered, and blood smeared across the exit door. The man they arrested had escaped from a nearby psychiatric facility earlier that day. He'd broken into the school through a maintenance door, armed with a metal bar and something that looked like a homemade weapon. They said he hadn't meant to hurt anyone. He was confused, according to the report. But the look in his eyes when they took him away said otherwise. For weeks after, none of us could sleep. The sound of that knocking haunted our dreams. I'd wake up at night thinking I heard it again. 3 slow taps somewhere in the dark. Even now, years later, every time I step into a gym, that memory comes back. The smell of sweat, the flicker of the lights, the cold tile under my feet, and that sickening silence right before the knocking began. It's strange how something as simple as a sound can stay with you forever. It doesn't matter how much time passes, the fear doesn't fade. It just hides, waiting for the right quiet moment to come back. And when it does, it's as real as the day it happened. These weren't stories from horror movies. They were real. Real schools, real fear, real people who never saw it coming. So next time you hear a lockdown alarm or a phone ring in an empty classroom, remember, sometimes the scariest stories don't start in the dark. They start in places we thought were safe. Hit like if your heart raced, subscribe for more true horror stories, and comment below which one haunted you the most. This is Hidden Fears, where the ordinary turns terrifying.